My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Succession Season 2. And this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch my review because I will be going in depth. Now, the first season of Succession was great. I loved it. The cast all does an amazing job. The writing is consistently strong from start to finish. My only concern is the possible direction that we're heading in for the future. And after watching the second season, wow. This season is absolutely incredible. I loved how at the start of this season, the very beginning, we just see what spot Kendall is in now. He's pretty much his dad's puppet. Everything he wants him to do, to say, he does. He really has very little free will here. Because he knows that if he pisses off his dad or if he doesn't do it, then his dad can destroy his life. And you just get that in the very first scene. He's just broken. And even though he was a flawed character, you just can't help but feel awful for him. Like he's easily the most empathetic person in this family. Yeah, he was about to screw them all over, but can you really blame them? Can you really blame him? Because I know I can't. And just to see him go through this was rough. And it was the best stuff of this season. But I was a little worried about this season in episode 2 because right away, Kendall is going behind his dad's back and he's talking to this company that his dad wants to shut down but he wants to keep open. And I'm just like, oh, are you kidding me? So that big ending of season 1 doesn't carry over into more than one episode of season 2? And I'm just like, oh. Really? But that's not the case here. No. What it turns out is that he's a bigger puppet than ever. And he's so good at it. Like, he not only misled the people he was purposely misleading, but he misled the audience too. And when he goes up there and he gives everyone some hope, he's like, we're gonna get through this together. And then just a few days later, he fires everyone. You're just like, holy shit. He's ruthless. Like, what a vile thing to do. And you just start to understand, like, how big this thing is going on between Kendall and his dad. And how Logan is just abusing him. He's just wrenching him dry of everything that he could get him to do. No matter how much he doesn't want to do it. Same with episode 3. Like, there's a person writing a book on Logan. And Logan's like, okay, who's talked to this person? And there's a scene where Kendall and Roman are talking and they're confiding in each other. And then Kendall completely stabs him in the back. And then it turns out Logan asked him to. And it's so messed up what Logan's doing to him. He's getting him not only to backstab people who he works with, but his family too. Like, it's truly awful. In episode 3, you just get that on full display. Like, Logan is a terrible piece of shit. What he was doing to Tom and Greg and that one other dude, getting them to crawl on their arms and legs, acting like pigs, getting them to oink. What a sadistic fuck. Like, oh, just an awful, awful person. And I felt so bad for Tom in that episode because after all of that, he goes home and he just needs his wife. He needs Shiv. And it's quite clear that Shiv just had sex with another dude. And you can just feel the pain with Tom. Like, you just feel awful for him. And then we get episode 4, which is called Safe Room, which is a perfect episode of television. This episode was just phenomenal. First of all, let's talk about Connor's talk at the funeral. Connor goes up to make a speech, and all he does is talk about objective facts. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Like, it might be one of the funniest moments in the show so far because I was just... great scene. But then we get this plot about someone in the building who shoots himself. So the building goes on lockdown. And just everything that was going on here was excellent. First, we get Greg breaking up with Tom, which was just hilarious. Like, in the way Tom reacted was really funny, but at the same time, it really reveals a lot about that character and where he is emotionally. Because when Greg was breaking up with him, he's just like, well, you know, It can be an open work relationship. And you can just tell that something in Tom snapped because he sounded like Shiv in that moment. And he starts to realize that nobody really wants him, and it's really starting to affect him. So I thought that stuff wasn't just really funny, but also character revealing. And then we get the introduction to Rhea, played by Holly Hunter, who does a great job in this show. But then we get some of the best stuff with Kendall. The lockdown's going on, and Kendall's on the edge of the building. He's thinking about jumping. He's in so much pain, he wants to end it all. But he doesn't. He goes back inside, he negotiates, he does a great job. And then, throughout this entire episode, Shiv is watching him and Logan get along perfectly. Logan is getting him out of trouble, he's sticking up for him, he listens to him, and Shiv's just like, what's Kendall got on him? Like, why is Dad like this with him? And she's thinking that Kendall's blackmailing Logan when it's the other way around. And you really start to get a sense of just how messed up this family is. And when she confronts Kendall at the end of this episode, and Kendall goes up nice and close to her and just gives her a hug, and he starts crying. First of all, Sarah Snook's acting in this moment is just perfect. Like, she pulls a 180 with her facial emotion so perfectly, but it might be the most genuinely emotional moment in the show so far. You just start to see how broken Kendall is. He's not okay. He's basically being psychologically tortured. And just to see him in this kind of pain just broke my heart. And then at the end of the episode, he goes over to the ledge again, and they put up a wall so he couldn't even think about it. There's no escape. He's trapped. And I think another interesting thing about Kendall is that he can't tell anyone about what's going on. He can't tell Shiv the truth. He can't tell Stewie the truth. He can't. Because if he does, he gives them that power. So he's just stuck. Just a phenomenal episode. Love it. And then we get episode 5, which is another great episode. They're going to the Pierce's family, and at the beginning, Logan tells them not to be themselves, to act a specific way. And this episode's just fascinating because at first everyone's acting the way Logan told them to, but just moment by moment, minute by minute, you can just see everyone's true characters coming out in full display, and you can just feel Logan's judgment upon them. And then Logan being a bit iffy on Shiv, taking over, causing her to self-destruct and blow it to the point where he was willing to blow this entire deal over. Like, this deal that he's been working multiple episodes for, it's a huge deal, it's been made clear. He was gonna blow it all because she wanted Logan to announce Shiv as the next head of the company. Like, he wouldn't follow up on his word to such a degree that he was willing to just lose what he wanted most in that moment. Logan has no forgiveness. One mistake and he was willing to throw it all away. And you can just see how messed up his kids are because of that. We get that scene with Woman and Terabessa, is that her name? Whatever her name is. They're trying to have sex, but Woman just can't. He can't accept love. And then he goes over to Jerry, and Jerry starts yelling at him and humiliating him. And he starts, to the thought of that. And you're just like, holy shit, like, this guy is so messed up. He can't accept love. He's just been abused so much in his own life that he only gets off to being humiliated. And I also loved the time that Kendall spent with Naomi. I thought that those two had some really good chemistry, and it was just nice to see Kendall smile in this episode again. He really needed it. He really did. And then we get episode 6, well, right from the get-go, Logan's not even hiding the fact that he's controlling Kendall. Like, he's putting it out there, right in the open, for everyone to see. And it's humiliating. And then I thought this episode was also fascinating because Tom's talking to this one girl, and then Shiv comes over, and she basically shoos her away. And it's just interesting because Shiv can go ahead and have sex with whatever guy she wants. They're in an open marriage. And Tom can't. Because she wants to do whatever she wants, but she doesn't want Tom to. She wants people to want her, but she doesn't want anyone else to want Tom. This relationship is nothing more than something to boost her ego. It's a power trip. And you really start to see just how awful of a person she is. Speaking of change in power dynamic, I just love how as soon as all this stuff about the cruise goes out, the Roys and the Pierce's power dynamic changes entirely to the point where the Roys would do anything to make them happy. You know, it went from, you know, just take the money and walk out and getting your way to basically almost being on your knees begging them to take the deal. And then there's one moment where Logan is so mad that he smacks Roman in the face. And I just love how despite everything that Logan has on Kendall, Kendall snapped out of it in this one moment and stood up for his brother. Love that moment. And in the next episode, whenever Logan's alone with Kendall, you just see how nasty he is towards him. He's vile. He's relentless. He doesn't even want to see Kendall happy. He's happy with Naomi, and Logan just tells her to get lost pretty much. And them visiting the family of the one boy was a very emotional moment when you see the pictures of him throughout the house, and you can just see how awful Kendall really does feel about it. And his dad's just going over there in a publicity stunt, and it just shows how out of touch and how inhumane he is. But as much as I hate Logan, you see how the mom is, and it's not entirely his fault the kids are as messed up as they are. The mom is pretty awful too. Like, there's a moment where Kendall really needs to talk to her about something. And she just, I don't really feel like doing that. And you're just like, wow, what a bitch. She then uses the kids as a bargaining tool to get what she wants. And then she leaves without saying goodbye. So not only is Logan a giant piece of shit, but so is the mom. Like, these kids were doomed from the start. And you just feel awful for them. And then we get the episode called Dundee, and this episode I thought was actually hilarious. Like, Roman cracked me up from beginning to end. With that opening tape for his dad's birthday at the very beginning, when he records it, and then the guy's like, okay, that was perfect, just one more. And he's just like, why would I do one more if it was perfect? And the guy's just like, just do one more. So he's just like, oh, be golly. I thought that was hilarious. He just cracked me up throughout this entire episode. James Cromwell came back as Ewan in this episode, and I don't know if I like him that much as a character. Like, he's kind of on his high horse thinking he's better than everyone all the time. But he seems like maybe not as bad. He doesn't seem like a great guy either. Like, making great choose between the money in his will or having a job. Like, that's a pretty shitty thing for him to do. Like, I understand it to a certain degree, but I still don't like him. I saw Logan arriving at his surprise birthday and then immediately leaving as soon as everyone says surprise was hilarious. But I also just love how everyone's messing with Rhea in this episode, trying to screw her up a little bit. And I just thought that stuff was all really great, and how Shiv is trying one last time to be selected as the next person to take over. And she's just sucking up to the dad, being like, no, I don't want you to pick me. I want you to pick who you think should have it in your heart. And she's just pulling out every manipulative card. And I thought, oh, well, she's getting it now. And she still didn't get it. It still went to Rhea. You know, just like, shit, that gotta sting. Like, I actually didn't see that coming. I thought after all that, Shiv would get it, but no. And then Marsha leaves him because she feels betrayed, rightfully so. And like, that was the one person from the beginning of the show who never had a bad thing to say about him, who was always there for him. He's awful to everyone around him, no matter who they are. And then we also get Kendall's rap, which I heard about in this episode before I watched it, and I was expecting it to be quite cringeworthy, but Jeremy Strong, not a bad rapper, I'll say that. A little cringy, but that's intentional, but not as cringy as I was expecting. But then we get to episode 9, where they all go to DC, and I thought this episode was great. Just so much of what's been established in this show so far is coming into play here, and you just see how bad Tom is on the spot, because wow, he butchered that big time. He's just a complete mess in this episode. And then Kendall and Logan go on stand, And they're just nailing it. Like, I was surprised by how controlled Logan was, because we always see him as this overly reactive, emotional guy, but here he's keeping his cool, he's saying the right things. You know, you're seeing the mastermind in action. And then Kendall also does a great job here, and you can just see, like, in another timeline, in another universe, these two would have been such a great match together. Like, they could have ran this company together so well. And I just thought this episode was engaging. It was tense. Everything is going from bad to worse to worse to worse. And you're just on the edge of your seat to see this house of cards crumble. And it's just riveting stuff. And then we get to the season finale, and there's lots of great stuff going on play here. Let me just say that board just looks amazing. Like, man, if I spent a week on that board, that would just be marvelous. Marvelous indeed. But there's so many great stuff going on here. I like the fact how everyone's kind of hyping up Roman, how he did a great job, but Roman's just like, you know what, I'm going to be honest. I don't think I did a good job. I like that. I like how you see the relationship between Tom and Shiv kind of started to crumble here, and how Tom confronts her about her shitty actions. And it's just satisfying to see him stand up for himself against her. Yeah, I love that one line. He's trying to figure out if he'd be less happy without her than he is with her. And that was a really great line. I also like the line where Kendall and Naomi are together, and then Logan, what a piece of shit. He tells Naomi to get lost pretty much. So when she's leaving, she's asking Kendall to come with her, and he's just like, I run a couple days. And then, you know, I gotta do this for my dad. And she says to him, you know, he only likes you when you're broken. Like, that's why he sent her away. He doesn't like seeing Kendall happy in any way whatsoever. Hate him. I thought that one scene where Tom reaches over and eats Logan's chicken was really funny. But let's just get to it. So when episode 9 ended, I was just like, oh, Logan's going to sacrifice Kendall. He's going to be the one who he gets to take the fall for everything. So the entire episode, I was just waiting for that to happen. Like, they keep building it up. Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? And nobody's saying Kendall. And I'm like, it's going to be Kendall. So I'm just waiting for it to happen. Then it happens. I'm like, you know, I heard so many amazing things about this finale. But, like, I saw the fact that he was going to take the fall for it from a mile away. And then I was just like, really? Like, this first season ended with Kendall in a bad spot, and now we're going to do that again? I don't know. I wasn't looking forward to it. Kendall goes up there, and he's saying how he's going to discuss the illegalities of what happened. And then he says, but. And as soon as he says, but, I was just like, oh my god. I actually got up from my seat and, like, hunched right into the TV. And then he starts tearing his dad apart, throwing him under the bus in every possible way. And oh my god, I was just like, oh my god, he did it! I was losing my shit. You know, and then we find that Greg still has the files. Like, that guy is a wolf in sheep's clothing. But just watching Kendall say all that stuff, trying to destroy his entire family empire, was just so satisfying. But my favorite moment of this episode is actually Logan's reaction. As someone who we've seen be mad and furious and get overly emotional every time, he wasn't even remotely mad. As his son stood up there and was going to destroy him and everything he stood for, Logan looked at him and he was proud of him. He was really proud of his son in that moment. It's like Roman said in season 1, the only way he's ever going to respect you is if you try to kill him. And just when that music picks up and we see Kendall looking at the camera and we see him looking at his dad through the TV and Logan just sitting there, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. What an effective moment. I can't wait for season 3. I'm so excited. Oh my god. But this was a phenomenal season of television. The latter half is a bit slower than the first half, but it's deliberate. It's building to something bigger. And if it didn't have the impact it had, I would have been left a little disappointed. But because it had that impact, I'm just, yes. The performances are all fantastic once again. Jeremy Strong, I hope he won every Emmy for this season because he's incredible from beginning to end here. Sarah Snook is amazing in it. Brian Cox is fantastic in it. It's kind of funny because Brian Cox and Danny Houston are both in this season and they were both William Stryker, so we get the two William Strykers together. But yes, Brian Cox is just fantastic. He's commanding throughout this entire season. Kieran Culkin was fantastic in this season. J. Smith Cameron's also fantastic. Holly Hunter's great. Nicholas Braun, Matthew McFadden. Everyone's fantastic in this season. And I just love the story. I loved watching Kendall's character develop throughout this season. If you view this season through Kendall's eyes, it's just so satisfying. At the beginning, he's being abused, he's psychologically tortured, he's just so depressed and lost. And to watch him gain his confidence again and to stand up against his abuser, oh, it's so satisfying. Like, his character work in this season is just top notch. And just watching all the pieces coming into play, oh, it's just masterful writing. I do have a few complaints. My few complaints are just lack on cohesiveness of the show as a whole at this point because the season 1 began and Logan's really sick. And that's why he's looking for someone to take over his company. But Logan's never sick in this season. He's fine from beginning to end. And it's just like, oh, so is he instantly better? Like, that was a big part of season 1. And it just feels odd they didn't incorporate that into season 2 some ways. And also, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Kendall should have an ex-wife and these kids because they always seem to forget about them. Like, that guy, you know, I love him as a character. He's the most likable of the bunch, but the fact that he's such an awful dad kind of does dampen my view of him, and I just don't think they add anything. Like, I think his kids won one episode this entire season for a very brief amount of time. They just didn't add anything. But that's my only complaints. Like, writing, directing, acting, like, this season was just phenomenal. And just how effective the ending was, I can't wait for Succession Season 3. I'm gonna go ahead and give Succession Season 2 a 9 out of 10. Okay, have you seen Succession Season 2? Was it a success in low books? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.